Folks, hello and welcome to the Talking Crit live stream. It's myself, my, eviler half, Bad Mike.
Hello.
And we have a special guest today, Greg Gillespie.
Hail and well met, everyone.
One of our favorite guests and has been documented. He's my man crush. And what a man crush means is there's nothing sexual about a man crush. Man crush is somebody that you wish you were. So I wish I was Greg because number one, look at the guy.
We're sort of heterosexual life mates.
Yes.
You know? All right.
And he publishes D&D stuff, great D&D stuff. And he's a professor that teaches RPGs. I mean, isn't that like the dream job? You know, okay, I want to do a photo shoot of Playboy models. I want to, this and that. And like somewhere along the line was, oh yeah, I want to teach college classes in RPGs, but they'll never, I want to be a comic book illustrator, writer. And then I want to teach RPGs, and you're never going to get any of those. But somehow Greg has two of those. No, I mean, sorry, he has one of those. He is a professor.
Well, maybe the second best one.
Yeah, fluffer for the Playboy models is probably number one. But yeah, this is a good number two. So welcome, Dr. Gillespie. And we like to have Greg on the show no matter what, but this week is a special occasion because his new Kickstarter for Dwarrowdeep has opened today to a resounding success. Congratulations on that. He has already funded. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about issues in gaming because we just love hearing Greg's opinion because let's face it, Eric and I are Neanderthals. Greg is the Cro-Magnon man of, he says the same things we do, but he says it prettier. So
not at all.
Oh, you're killing me, Mike. You're killing me softly with your words.
Well, I was on a Alyssa Fadden show last night, so that was really, because let's face it, she's one crude lady, and it was just rough, and we cursed and we drank, and this guy's a little more refined, so I had to, I'm trying to up my game now and be a little nicer and a little more refined. Because
what are you drinking?
Actually, I'm doing Texas whiskey now. I got Balcones Blue. Now, Balcones is a company in Texas, probably the best Texas whiskey. This is not they have different brands. They have like a $600 bottle that goes all the way down to $100 and $60. This is the $30 bottle. I thought I'd try it because I enjoy their whiskey, and it's actually pretty damn good. So I'm drinking some Texas whiskey. I'm trying to do a tour of Texas whiskeys lately because there are quite a few new Texas whiskeys. So I'm doing Balcones.
Years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to Shiner Box. So I always try to make sure that I sample those every time I'm down, and I enjoy that in terms of a taste of Texas.
Shiner's probably my favorite beer. There's several different varieties. My favorite is the grapefruit. What? Did I drop out? You
froze there for a second.
Oh dear. Yeah, Shiner's probably one of my favorite beers, and I like the Ruby Redbird, which is it's got. This doesn't sound good, but it is good. It's got cantaloupe taste in it. Now you're gonna say, what is cantaloupe doing in beer? It's actually pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. But Shiner's got some good varieties, but yeah, we have some really good Texas whiskey now. It's got to the point where some of the companies have been around for 20 years or more, so that you actually have now. I mean, I think this is aged a year, maybe. If you got some that are aged like 20 years now, so you've got some pretty good Texas whiskeys out there.
Yeah, we have a good regional beer in Ontario. It's called Sleeman's, and recently they do a low carb version. I eat keto, so everything I do is low carb, no sugar, and it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy about it. So that's going to be my. I've been off beer for a couple of years, waiting for sort of a good low carb version. And I'll be drinking that this summer for sure.
Well, Eric's been off beer for a year. What do you drink? Sort of, kind of.
Listen, if I get the opportunity, Corona Premier, which is the lower carb than the Corona Light, is actually very good, and I can handle the Mick Ultra if I put a lime in it and pretend it's a really cheap Corona. But right now, I just actually had a hop water. So this is actually this and hop tea are my non-alcoholic go-tos if I want the hoppy taste, because they've got hops in them. they're carbonated, and actually I prefer the hop tea because it's like it really has I've tried the near beers and most light beers taste like shit. So it's pretty interesting when something with 0 calories and 0 carbs tastes better than near beers and shit. And near beers are so high in fucking carbs anyway. The Heineken Zero is like fucking
see,
carbs.
What's weird to me about that is like, so it reminds me of like I drink Diet Coke. I don't like sugar very much, and so I drink Diet Coke because I'm just used to it after being a diabetic for 20 years. By the way, and Diet Coke isn't good for you either, but it's better than regular Coke. So I drink that, but one time somebody tried to pass off some diet caffeine-free Coke. I'm like, then what's the purpose? Okay, I can the Diet Coke, I understand, because you're still getting the caffeine in there, but caffeine-free, sugar-free Diet Coke, there's no point. I'll just lick a mud puddle to do that. So when you're drinking beer that's not really beer, but to me that's weird.
But like,
because there's no alcohol.
I happen to like hops. So the hop tea with like the it's a carbonated black tea with music hops is very nice. The chamomile it has a lot of caffeine too. So at least you're getting that. The chamomile one is nice before you go to bed. Rach likes that one. But,
Eric, do you have to do like no caffeine or what's the story?
No, for me, well, long story short. So the 2020, I was hospitalized 3 times, no COVID. But the most serious of the hospitalization, well, I don't know. You could say pneumonia and sepsis was kind of serious, but congestive heart failure kicked in. So that was in May. Hospitalized for 2 weeks with it. Hey, I've lost weight, but I also had to bring my blood sugar down. My A1C was like a 9.5. Now it's down to like a 5.7, 5.8. So could I stray and have a good beer here or there? Certainly. But I like to. So when I shop for food or snacks, all that stuff, do I shop keto? Yes. Do I do a strict keto diet? No. Mm-hmm. But I certainly, I watch a lot of the keto channels on YouTube and a lot of the cooking with keto because it is a great way to manage your blood sugar. And if I manage my blood sugar, I'm doing my heart a lot better. So hey, just one less stressor on it.
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel called Two Fit Docs. They're husband wife, and I think one's a nutritionist and one's a chiropractor or what have you. But the two of them, they basically experiment on themselves, and that's pretty much what I did for a year. I
really
organized with my GP, and I did blood tests every month for a year just to see if eating keto would lower my lipid levels. And I thought the science was good, but I wanted to actually do it on myself. And over that year, I would say it lowered my cholesterol a little bit, lipids just a little bit. And I think the main takeaway I have for me was that it was genetics are the overriding factor. If your body says you're to have high lipids, nutrition can sort of knock the corners off a little bit, but it's not going to make as for me anyway, as big a substantive change as I hoped.
Interesting.
Okay, old people, before we get too deep into talking about our bursitis and our gout, let's so we brought Greg on because we love Greg, but also he launched his newest Kickstarter, Dwarrowdeep. So we're gonna spend a little time talking about it. I looked today; it's already funded after 1 hour, which is great. And this is your fourth project that you have. This is your third. Oh no, your fourth. Actually, this is your fourth on Kickstarter because you did the 5th edition of Archaea also, right? But this is your fourth in a series of mega dungeons: Barrowmaze, Forbidden Caverns of Archaea, and Floating Dungeons of Highfell. All taking place in the same game world, all sort of in the same type of format. And I'm looking right now, like I said, 24th. It's got 24,000. I'm going to say we're going to get 25 before the end of the show. If we're not, then I'll make up the difference. No, Eric will make up the difference. But tell us a little bit about Dwarrowdeep and just where your thinking came from. This is a dwarf-centric dungeon, which I think is really interesting because I'm a sucker for anything demi-human based, especially dwarves, because dwarves I think are cool.
My icon is usually a dwarf, so hey.
Yeah. So for each of the mega dungeons that I've done, I'm trying to expand the definition of the traditional mega dungeon. I think, there's a place for your sort of tiered levels and all that stuff, and that works. But I think there are other models that we can employ that take some of those traditional themes that we all enjoy and are sort of core to the hobby, and sort of pull out some of those themes and then shuffle the deck in an interesting way that hopefully captures the imagination of the veteran gamer, and that's the person I'm trying to reach, the people that are sort of stout OSR types. So with this next project, the plan is to take. So I don't really feel, despite the place that sort of the dwarf themed dungeon has extending from Tolkien all the way forward, I don't think it's ever really been done the way I wanted to do it, the way I think it deserves. So this project is about realizing that vision, and that's the sort of the executive summary.
Yeah, I read the breakdown. I was immediately just, oh yeah, this is cool, because there's nothing better than an abandoned subterranean city, and then if it's a dwarven abandoned subterranean city, I'm totally in, because there's all kinds of, I can just see all kinds of scenarios forming in my head about that. But it looks like it has kind of the same. So most of your actually all of your mega dungeons, you have kind of a base city, kind of place where you're based at, and then a little ways off is where the side of the mega dungeon is. Now, what I think what's interesting is you don't do the same type of mega dungeon time again. So it may sound like it's another mega dungeon. It's not really the same thing, because for instance, Barrowmaze was a giant, really one level, basically a crypt, and it's mostly undead. It was a huge dungeon. But the next one, Forbidden Caverns Arcade, was more of a B2 Keep on the Borderlands, where there's a lot of it's a valley, and there's all kinds of little layers in there, and so you could just kind of pick and choose where you're going to go there. And then underground, there's a underground area, and then Highfell is totally different from either of those. It's a floating dungeon, and that's the one my players and I are going through right now. We just finished, I want to say, session 16 a couple weeks ago. We're doing another session this weekend, but there's a base on the ground, and up above is a floating 2 or 3 mile chunk of rock, and there's all these little wizards towers on there. So it's really interesting, because you're not doing the same type of mega dungeon anymore. Is that really a conscious decision that I'm not going to do anything? I'm not going to do what I did before. I'm going to go in a totally different direction.
That's the plan. So I've got like some design fundamentals that are really important to me, that I think are core and important. So those are sort of like the starting point, and then from there I adapt it to the vision of that specific dungeon. So in this instance, there will be multiple points of entry. There will be this is one where you will be able to camp out in the dungeon if you want to. There'll be specific areas that are highlit and detailed, but then there's going to be a fair amount of travel in between those spaces underground. So that'll create an interesting dynamic that I haven't explored yet. So I think I'll try to do. I've got a vision of and I'm experimenting with that right now. And then in addition to all that, trying to accommodate trying to accommodate the entire project in about 260 to 290 pages is the challenge. So you have to hone it in, you have to condense it, and then of course, just like my other dungeons, I want to make it atmospheric. I want the environment of the dungeon, the machinery of the environment of the dungeon working its way in the background against players as they're attempting to do what they do. And I think that tying that into the play experience is something that I keep at the forefront of my mind.
you mentioned something I thought was really interesting, and that's the when you said there's multiple ways in the dungeon. That's very Jaquayan, because, and we talked about Jaquayan dungeons, because up until Jaquay started doing stuff like Caverns of Thracia and Dark Tower, there was one way in the dungeon, and you went all along here. Then there's one way out. At the time, Paul, now Janelle, experimented with different entrances, different levels, being on one level, then traveling for a while. All of a sudden, you're on the second level, and you didn't know you were on the second level. One thing I like about your dungeons is there's usually multiple ways to get inside. In Barrowmaze, there's all the tombs out in the moors. There's some secret. There's one main entrance, but there's other mini entrances that you can go to explore Barrowmaze. Obviously, Forbidden Caverns Archaea, there's all these little separate dungeons, basically, so you can choose whichever one you want to go in. And then Highfell, there's probably a dozen different ways just to get to Highfell. And then once you're up there, there's all these different wizards towers, some which have dungeons beneath them. So is that kind of a conscious decision, dude? Were you a fan of Jaquays? Is that something you think about when you're doing something like that?
Absolutely. I think you'd be remiss if you didn't call out her name relative to dungeon design, and not all of those entrances need to be available right off the bat. Some can be, but then you want to make others, maybe you experiment with that entrance, but oops, there are trolls in there, or there's a monster perhaps it's sort of beyond your level. Maybe that's one that you just have to pin to your notebook, and maybe you come back to that a little further down the way. So that gives an opportunity, for players to keep notes. And I do try to put things in the design that reward the conscientious player, that reward the note taker, that reward the conscientious mapper. Those are the kinds of things that I think are, that's the game within the game that provides that depth of engagement and meaning, I think, especially for the veteran gamer.
That is more asked. What are the inspirations for Dwarrowdeep besides Tolkien? What is the creative process you utilize to write these?
Yeah,
well, I'm like a lot of dudes. I'm as visual a learner as most men. So I have a vision in my mind of where I start, and from there I start to flesh out the idea by journaling. So I've got some really terrific journals that sort of look like in-universe journals. They're all the sort of like they're tea-stained pages and things of that nature.
Nice.
And everything goes in the journal. And it could be as simple as like a pre-generated character name that I'm inspired by, or it could be monster entries will go in there. And I'm just a terrible artist, so I'll draw little stick figures where the monster will go, but I fill out the breadth and depth of it. And I put all this stuff in terms of the town or village and what the dynamic will be there and how that might connect to the dungeon. And it's really, so then from the journaling, then I'll start filling those things out in sections. And what I did with Barrowmaze Complete is I created a model on which the other dungeons will be based. So that's the model format that I use. And I do try to have some aesthetic consistency. So the person who's, for example, illustrating what the town looks like is the same person that did it for Highfell, is the same person that did it for Archaea. And I do try to keep that consistency for folks so that when they're flipping through the books, they can see the same vision that I have in my mind as rendered through an artist's imagination.
Yeah, and those are some great city map or town maps too. That I have a copy of those for Highfell for the city of Thatcham that they pass around when they wanted to go somewhere. And then one point I was talking about different houses. They said, "Well, that house isn't on this map." I said, "Well, that map's just representative. I mean, there's other things in there." Yeah. Like, oh well. Like, we didn't tell us that. We thought this is the whole village. I was like, well, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know what Greg's vision was, but I think that, for me, there's other buildings there that's just kind of representative of what you're seeing there. So I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I strongly, and anybody that plays the dungeons that I make, you need to push it and pull it and make it what your group wants to play. And if that means you throw in some different shops or some different temples and things like that, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yes, it's all about customization. I think that's why your stuff works so well. Everything that you've put out to the market thus far is stuff that GMs or DMs like myself can take and make our own, and yet still give an experience to their players that they can go to a convention or go on a message board or go on Facebook and talk about their experience and go, yeah, well, hey, you're playing Barrowmaze, right? Yeah, they'll recognize the experience. You still get that joint experience, but at the same time, people are getting something that is, like you said, molded to what that group needs and what you as a GM prefer to run. I love Barrowmaze. I haven't used it as much as I should. I feel like I'm going to be quoting from Tolkien here, but I really haven't used it as much as I should because there is so much to it. But I've taken bits and pieces of it.
Well, it's interesting,
and used it elsewhere.
Just to like, for some people it's too much, and then for other people it's not enough. So, like, one of the things when it comes to mega dungeons that's really important to me, like having a mega dungeon that you can never complete, an adventure that you can never complete, makes zero sense to me. Like, you have to give people, at minimum, you have to give people a Jim Carrey Dumb and Dumber chance. So there's the 1% chance. But to me, it has to be like, even if you play it once every other week for 3 years, there should be a realistic option of completing the adventure. And who wouldn't like to say, I won Barrowmaze and it was advanced or whatever, right? Like, so, and that's exciting because that's part of the lore. Like, the thing that we enjoy most, I think, as gamers, is that we have the lore of our games, the lore of our local gaming groups. Do you remember when such and such did this, or when such and such fell down the bottomless pit in Barrowmaze, or whatever? And that's the kind of thing that we continue to talk about and that we laugh about, and that makes games and Dungeons and Dragons so amazing.
Well, see, we're gonna agree to disagree on this, because my definition of a mega dungeon is one you can never fully map. Now, I don't say finish. Okay. You can finish it, but I say you can never fully map a mega dungeon. And I would say most of your stuff falls into that category, because I guess you could fully map Barrowmaze, but that's a long time coming. And the other ones, you'd have to go through every single Wizard's Tower in Highfell and every single monster lair and the Forbidden Caverns. I don't know if you could do that. So I'm going to quibble with you on that. I think that's the whole point of a mega dungeon, is you can't map it all. But yes, you can. You do have an end game. All your modules, or I'm sorry, all your mega dungeons have an end game, which I think is really interesting. And you and I have talked about this before, because I pitched you an idea for a mega dungeon I want to work on someday, and you suggested you have to. I said, should I have an end game? And you said, yes, you need to have an end game, and that was the reason you gave. Is that because you have to have, your players have to have a way of accomplishing something beyond just, okay, we explored the mega dungeon, it was great.
Yeah. Well, to me, you do. Now, I can appreciate, like the idea that, well, here's this big place and you just adventure in there and you do your thing and it never actually goes anywhere. And to me, there should be some means of feeling a sense of accomplishment. And there can be many accomplishments, as in, we survived this session and that's an accomplishment. But then there needs to be sort of medium arcs of accomplishment and then larger arcs of accomplishment. And I think even if someone doesn't finish a dungeon, you're responsible to have that sort of information in there, with an understanding that every group will sort of make it their own, take it their own direction, and then you adapt it to your circumstances.
That's a good point, because what we're doing Highfell right now, we've been playing over a year now. I think we're on, like I said, sessions 16 or 17, and the group took it in a left turn direction that I did not see coming. That's going to result in a totally different type of ending than you envisioned when you wrote it. But it's fun. Right. I mean, it's great because I managed to work with it, and I kind of went along with their ideas, and now it's going to be a totally different end game than you envisioned when you first wrote it. But I think it's going to be an end game that's going to make them very happy eventually.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you saying to me that your group decided to mate Biax or something in.
They have a Biac. Yes, they have a booming Biac business now because they decided that these Biacs, this is things used to fly up to Highfell. After they had gone to Highfell a few times, it became like a boom town. They're dropping all this treasure into Highfell, and so all these other would-be adventurers coming by, and they all need a way up to Highfell. So one of the members of our group said, well, let's just start breeding these things and selling them.
Geez.
And they're like, well, how much could we get for them? And so I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I'm thinking, well, 1,000, you could ask for at least 1,000. So people were sitting there dropping, I'll give you 1,000 gold pieces. And that's the group like, whoa, hold on. If that's what you're offering us, we can ask for 2,000. So now, yes, they have a budding Biac business. And so I had to make up everything about a Biac because you gave very scanty information about Biacs, Greg. So I had to say, okay, yeah, they're born live and it takes a year to grow up. So, I'm having to make
That's
up all this.
true.
It's great. It's great, though. And so, yes, now they have two of the adventures they adventure with their nicknames are Ham and Eggs, and that's a long story. They're the Biac proprietors, and they run their Biac barn. And I actually did have some consequences. I had a group of mercenaries try to steal their Biacs once, and they had to fight them off. So that was kind of showing them because they had very lax security at the Biac barn. And so, yes, they got the word that a group of mercenaries was going to kidnap them. So they had a big battle in the town. And but yeah, that's kind of like a sideways twist. But they took a sideways twist where they suspected that one of the members of the Mystics, who are a mage council that kind of rules over the town, was doing something sneaky or evil, which you did not put in your original book, but I thought was a really great direction to go. And so I'm like, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. So yes, the leader of the Mystics is evil, and they found out this is true, and now they're trying to figure out, because he's very high level, they're trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do about it. And so so now they're trying to do some diplomacy with some of the other power groups in the town to see if they're, did you notice this guy's doing some kind of bad things? And if so, would you support us? So we decided to take him on. Now they're nowhere near high enough level to take him on now, but that's going to be a plot thread, for later on. But that's a totally different direction than anything you wrote about actually happening in the module. But it was just it arrived organically, and that's one thing I love about your adventures is that they can go in so many directions. You create a great base to basically let your imagination run wild.
Yeah, I think you want to find that happy medium. You don't want to colonize imaginations and not give DMs opportunities to move in the directions they want to, and yet at the same time you can't be too thin either. Right. So yeah, I mean the gestation period of the Biac was not something I considered, and you're welcome to do that on the fly.
Yes, that was that they did take it, but that's a good advantage. I mean, that's a good experienced group that a lot of these guys have been game with for almost 40 years. So they make the game interesting for themselves because they'll do stuff like that, which I think is great. And then I have to riff off that. I'm like, great. Now I got to figure out all this stuff about the Biac mating rituals and, whatever, I got to figure out. So, and they brought enough Biacs back that they have, we have to check them to say if they're male or female. So I'm like, I almost gave them a hard time with that and said, nope, you got all males. You got to go get a female now. But I said, yeah, they brought back about 8. So I'm like, yeah, there's a female here or there. And so they're flying with that. But that's just a great example of just one of the different directions you can take some of the stuff, especially if you have information, like that. And you put a little bit of that in every one of your mega dungeons. You have just kind of like a new monster, or I like the way sometimes you have, you always have a new mechanism. Like one of the things I like about Barrowmaze was you had a mechanism for basically breaking down walls, which I thought was really interesting because that was something I can't believe had never been in a dungeon before then. But you had a mechanism for using a sledgehammer to basically take down walls.
Yeah, I go back through. I watch a lot of historical documentaries, and I'm interested in looking at time periods related to burial rituals and excavations and things of that nature. And I came across a picture of of an archaeologist standing in front of a bricked wall to a crypt, and I thought, yoink, that's an immediate yoink right there. Now, the question isn't, all right, well, you see something interesting you like to use. The question is, how do you connect that problem to a mechanic that is simple enough for DMs to run at the table, and yet communicates a plus minus situation to players. So that's really the crux of it. If you have that interesting idea, it's about how can you make that happen at the table in a meaningful but simple way.
Sure. And you have one of the mechanisms you have in Highfell, for instance, is there's a lot of magic scrolls and magic books in there. So you have a lot of libraries of magic books, and you have a mechanism for basically going through all those books and figuring out, how long it's going to take you to go through an entire library, because you may go to one dungeon. There may be 5 libraries there of 900 books. And so, without me having to, without the DM having to think about it, you have a really easy little mechanism. Okay, here's how long it takes. This many people, they're going to do this and that. And then, they're going to go through all the books and find ones that are worth a lot. And actually, one of the cool things is one of my players, my brother, he's actually starting a church there. When his priest started a church, he decided that he wants to have a library now. And so he's asking me for all the titles of all the books, because I usually kind of read them off. I say, because we get a good laugh because you put a lot of puns in your work and a lot of kind of funny in jokes. And so I'll read the titles off. Well, now he's like, no, I need copies of all those, because I'm gonna pull some of those out of Party Treasure for my library. I'm like,
nice.
Dude, you got to be kidding me. That's extra work for me. That's a lot of extra work for me, because now I got to copy and paste all those lists of books I was just reading out aloud. And so I said, well, the ones I've already done, you can't go through. No, you skip those books. From here on now, you could actually get the book name. So,
that's a guilty pleasure on that. I'm definitely guilty as charged, like being an academic and having an interest in learning and books and the knowledge they possess. I mean, there's sort of a mysticism to that in my mind that I wanted to bring to that notion of a wizard tower, and I see them as sort of like dusty academics who happened to be able to throw the odd spell. And of course, all of that was inspired initially as a young boy reading, the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and being inspired by Gygax.
So Thaddeus asks here, the Kickstarter says Dwarrowdeep represents the 4th installment of 6 mega dungeons. You get to fill in the outdoor survival map. Do you have plans for the material for the Barrowmaze world beyond mega dungeons? Well, that's kind of far ahead. I mean, you still got 3 more mega dungeons to go before we need to start worrying about that, I guess.
Yeah, I do. So you're right. You got it spot on. I think if I did a gazetteer or like a world sort of book where I brought everything together with trade routes and seasons and festivals and things like that, and put it all under one roof, that would be a pretty tremendous thing. But I've got a lot of work to do between now and then, that's for sure. And I have my hands full, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that everyone's given me with the Kickstarter, and I'm humbled by it, and I'm excited and more determined than ever to make this the best one yet.
Well, that you've already working on a cosmology, because you have gods. Now, when you were doing Barrowmaze, and did you go do 6 dungeons at one point, or did you just think, well, let's just do Barrowmaze and worry about the rest later? Because if you planned all this out beforehand, my respect for you even grows even more. Because I don't know, is that something you did, or you just decided at a certain point, like, you know what, I'm going to make a whole world out of this? I
do put seeds in one that lead to others, and so yes, I can't say it's completely mapped out, but when I'm working on one project, I know some of the things I want to pull from that project into the next one. So there are threads and themes, and the close reader will be able to pick out some of those. And one of the ways, one of the simplest ways you can do that is, of course, something like deities. And I'm not a fan of letting deities get out of hand, because I prefer a low magic game. But you do have to have just enough to provide opportunities for villains and for cults and things like that make pulp Dungeons and Dragons so awesome. And I'm, of course, a big fan, given Scottish heritage and an interest in barrows and standing stones. So there's a plot at play with the standing stones as well.
Nice. Well, you're at. I just peeked. You've passed 24.5.
Oh yeah, there we go. Only 500, and I'll be off the hook. Come on, people. Let's do it.
Yes,
come on, 500.
Yeah, you won't have to back for
Don't.
5 books, Mike.
Oh, don't make me have to buy 5 books. Yes, we're at 24.5 now. Let's get to 25. Please, God, let us get to 25.
Yeah, somebody asked me today on the Kickstarter page to do some dungeon screen plates front and back.
I saw that. Yeah.
I'll do those and I'll include them in everybody's PDF download.
Nice, that's great.
So when you do these things, you have to sort of have, okay, well, if you just get the funding and no more, what can you do with that? And then if you have sort of a mid-case scenario, and then if you have a best case scenario, right? So then now you can start taking the base idea that you have, and you can start putting more bells and whistles onto it and into it. And that's exactly what I plan to do.
Well, let me ask you kind of an uncomfortable question. I mean, I don't know if it's how uncomfortable it is, but for Archaea, you got 40,000 Canadian, and then for Highfill, you only got 26,000. What would happen between there? Because I think Highfill is a great dungeon. I think I feel kind of bad for you because at the high quality it is, I feel like you didn't make any money with Highfill. But I mean, it's an incredible dungeon. I don't see any lack of quality from one to the other. What do you think happened between those two? And now, like I said, you're looking at 25. You're really almost to where you were with Highfill right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So to answer your question, the model between when I did Archaea and when I did Highfill, the model changed. So at the time when Archaea was run, most people that were doing Kickstarters at the time, postage was part of the model. So you included that amount, and then off it went, and that's how that model worked at that time. But between then and Highfill, that had sort of changed, and over the arc of the time Kickstarters have been going the last 6 or 8 years, people have been doing more and more delivery through, for example, drive-through RPG. So given I'm in Canada, I face some logistical and financial obstacles that are a bit different than if you're in the United States. So for anybody who's not aware, Kickstarter takes their 8 or 10%, and then I'm getting Kickstarter funds in Canadian dollars, but most of my bills I'm paying to American artists and mappers and things. So then I'm losing effectively 25 to 28% on conversion, depending on where the dollar is. So it makes it a challenge, but I like challenges. So I like, if somebody says, no, you can't do something, then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do the best I can with it. And I'm very fortunate in that if I've approached an artist or I've approached a mapper, I've explained the situation. This is where I'm at, and this is what I'm trying to do. Are you willing to work with me? And people in our community have been super awesome in helping me along the way. And I really, really appreciate that to make it all happen.
But you have not pulled a raggy yet and told him to work on spec yet, have you? Oh, I'm sorry. That's for later on the show. We'll save that.
Steve Rice has a question. He wants to know, will there ever be VTT maps made available for online gaming?
There should be. So if you join the Barrowmaze group, some people have made maps for virtual tabletops that they have made available there. I'm working on a revision to the barrowmaze.com site. So that's where I host Meat Shields. If anybody's unfamiliar with that, we can speak about that. But I'm working on a revision to the website that will include links to all the sort of the stuff the community has created in relation to Barrowmaze that will be free downloads and that sort of thing. So that's coming. And but I don't have a timeline on it yet, but it'll happen in 2021.
That's worth mentioning that this is the 10th anniversary of Barrowmaze, which is it's become kind of a cult classic. It's sort of a touchstone in the community, and talk about that for a little bit. I mean, do you think that, because it seems like one of those things that it's so pretty good at the time, but as time's gone on, it's been rolling on, getting a little bigger, a little more people. Some of the stuff I've seen in the Barrowmaze community is absolutely incredible. There was a guy a while back, and you'll probably remember this, who made his own customized everything for Barrowmaze. He had spell cards and monster. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. So it's a real touchstone with people in the OSR.
It is, and I'm very fortunate that that people consider it in that way. When I first started off, when I did the first version of Barrowmaze, and I have to admit, coming from an academic world, all you ever do is you worry about content. That's all you do. You don't worry about layout. You don't worry about art. You don't worry about anything. So it was a real learning experience for me, and I was just sort of cobbling together what I thought should be done, and I just thought it was more of like a joke thing, and I think I put it on drive-through for $6.66 because I just thought the number I have 666 repeating through Barrowmaze all the time in different ways. Sometimes it's explicit and sometimes it's explicit, and then that just sort of blew up, and I'm like, okay, well, I made a couple $100 from this. I need to put that back in and get some more art, get better art, and then it just sort of took off from there, and I didn't really initially think that anybody would be interested in it. And then as it advanced and moved along, like one of the things that people like is that when I did Barrowmaze Complete and I was thinking about it, I thought, and I was laying out the content, I thought, there's some really funny stories that happened at my table that are sort of like self-deprecating. It's just like, geez, here I'm trying to do my best to design, and here's something I didn't anticipate at all, and it happened, and this is how it went, and then we one of my players wrote some poems with regard to player characters that were involved, and I thought those were funny, and then I included those as little sort of like highlight boxes in the text of Barrowmaze Complete. People love that stuff. It's like sort of like, I guess, being a fly on the wall, but it's also showing, despite doing your very best to anticipate what players might do, at the end of the day, you still can't anticipate everything players are going to do, as we all know. So that's something that has been a little bit of a gem that I think people have appreciated. And the other thing that people really like is the random barrow generator at the back. Like I just took the one-page dungeon and I sort of adapted it, thinking, okay, well, this might be a fun thing for people to play with a bit. They could expand the barrel mounds, and people love that too. So that's fun. And so the long and the short of it is I'm very, very humbled and very pleased that people have take so much enjoyment from it. It has become sort of the touchstone dungeon of the OSR, and I really appreciate that people like my dark imagination.
Well, you have the 10th anniversary edition. Is there anything different from the 10th anniversary edition than prior editions?
No, it's the same thing. This is another guilty pleasure. I've always loved monochrome covers, and I know some people really love them, some people don't like them, but I really love them. I thought they were terrific. So I wanted to do that, and then to mark the 10th anniversary, I asked James from Grognardia if he would consider writing a book forward. So he's just putting the finishing touches on that now, and I'm very thankful that he was willing to do that.
Yeah, he was kind of the guy that got Eric and I into this, right, Eric? We talk about James a lot. He obviously disappeared from the scene for quite a while, but he was kind of the guy we found one day and said, "Oh, here's a guy that likes the same kind of things we do, and he's got a blog." And so that's
Yeah, Grognardia was part of like the holy unholy trifecta of blogs that got me into the OSR. It was that. It was Joe the Lawyer's Wondrous Imaginings
and Rants
and Jeff Rents. Yeah,
Jeff Rents. Yeah, that was one of my big ones too. Yeah, those
are the core three, and then there were others that were, that you went to all the time too. But these are the ones that I was always like, this is if I'm going to start blogging, these are the types of blogs that I found influential, and they were people that always had great stuff to say about the hobby, and I think that's inspiring. And I think over the years, there are blogs are still out there, but there's less of them. I think podcasts and live streams are where the communication is going now, and I'm sure there'll be something down the line, probably with virtual reality or something like that, where people will be doing their own shit in another 10 years. But it all moves. It's interesting.
Whoever just took away $80, I curse you. and now it's at 24,474.
I
Go
curse
to
you.
hell! Go to hell, you awful person!
Yeah,
Unless you're trying to figure out a way to make your pledge bigger, then in that case you can just
right. If you're going to go for 5 books, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, because I was thinking
spot
about doing the double books. I was going to get the 10th anniversary edition. I may just get it for the spiffy cover. I mean, I know there's not any new content, but the cover looks pretty cool. If you go to the Dwarrowdeep page, there's art. There's a bunch of art there, but there's also a sample cover for the 10th anniversary Barrowmaze, which looks very cool, very very old school.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with the art that I've gotten so far. One of the people that I do try to include as often as I can is a fellow by the name of Stephen Thompson, and he does work for a lot of the big comics folks. And so when he wants to slum it, he'll do work for me, and I'm very fortunate that I don't know if he really likes the stuff that I come up with, or if it's just sort of like a side thing. But so I gave him this massive art brief. And so every about once a week, he sends me a rough draft of something, and I yay nay it. But delivery will be in the summer. So I'm really excited about that, to have him involved in a scope that I haven't had in the past, with the exception perhaps of Barrowmaze Complete. And he has more of a photorealistic style, but there's room for that. There's room for stuff that's a bit more cartoony, and I do try to find a balance between those things.
Yeah, your art is a really good point, because you've got a lot of people on there. Otis has done your first 3 covers. Now I understand he's not going to do this cover. You have somebody else, right, for the cover for this. But you have Errol Otis. You have Stephen Pogue. I mean, a lot of the really kind of the classic OSR type guys. But you have a lot of stuff in there. Obviously the maps by, I can't remember the guy's name. Kevin. No, who does your city maps or your town maps? That's
that's Dave Needham.
Needham, yes. Oh, yeah. Those are great. And
he's great.
So yeah, you're really big on art, and a lot of people don't really put as much time or effort into the art. I mean, they'll have a few art pieces, but you really go overboard with the art. If I had one of the books here, I'd have to go in the other room. I don't feel like going in the other room, but yeah, you go overboard in the art almost. You have a lot of art pieces.
Yeah, I have. It's a double-edged sword in that in my mind's eye, I know I have the vision of what I want, and so I'm a bit of a pain in the butt to artists until we work together for a little bit, and then they have a pretty good feel. So I used to give fairly detailed written briefs to artists, but then the ones I work with or have worked with over a long period of time, I more give sort of art briefs, like I like this, I don't like that, and then we're already on the same page, having worked together a bunch, so that works out. And I think for if anybody's thinking about doing a dungeon, you can't go short on the art. So there's a lot of,
unless you're Bill Webb, but let's don't talk about that.
There's a lot of information conveyed through the art that someone maybe they're just like flipping by and they're like, oh, that's cool. But so much time went into that just for that person to say, oh, that's cool. I'm very specific. I do all the art briefs. I have a very specific idea of what I want. Like for Barrowmaze, for example, with all the artists, I was like, we have to have torches and lanterns because it's not signaling the light, it's signaling the darkness. And that darkness is part of the atmosphere that I want to convey, so that art has to work has to be synergistic with the mechanics. And if it's not doing that, I think you're going about it the wrong way. So I do try to tie the art to the mechanics and the atmosphere of the environment the best I can.
Doom Bunny, if that was you who just bopped it up to 24,593, thank you very much. You're in my book of dreams. So yeah,
the OSR Giga Dungeon.
If that was you, Doom Bunny, thank you very much. If not, that means we got another big bump coming. So yes, hopefully that was you. Well, I was going to ask you something else. I got so excited about seeing the money go up again that it jumped out of my mind.
John Miller is like, he's thinking of the art in G1. Simple stuff, but really helps set the mood.
Yeah.
And that is certainly it. So, again, I used to underappreciate art when I was younger. But as I've gotten older, I appreciate it as a GM because it inspires me. Mm-hmm. Good art allows me to visualize what the writer of the adventure or the mega dungeon or the setting intends. Sometimes it isn't always conveyed with the words, so much it is with the art. And again, it allows, in my opinion, allows a little bit of consistency amongst gaming groups when we all know what that looks like because you all remember that picture from the book, right? When the DM held it up in front of you to say, this is what you see. Well, that becomes that shared experience.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And the Tomb of Horrors art book is the inspiration for the art books that I have in all my projects. And those, at the end of the day, those are not cost effective. But having said that, they're just so inspiring. Like
my players love those. They absolutely love the art pictures.
Yeah,
so
yeah. How can you have to do it? Like to me, you can't not do it. It's so integral. And when it's one thing, if you have a good DM who can be really evocative at the table, that's great. That's awesome. That's all you really need. But when you can also put up a picture alongside a dramatic presentation, now you're really talking. You've got a really good gaming experience, I think.
Or if you're like me and you don't want to bother with it, you just go, here's the picture. Here's what they love them. They're great. It's kind of cool because I read your dungeons. It's like you threw in the best of everything of the first 20 years of TSR because you have the art books. You've got the whole setting, hex map, village. Here's what the hex map of the area looks like. Here's the village you're going to be based out of. Here's all the information you're going to need. Here's all the power groups. Here's all the people. It's like you just set everything up so well. It's like the best of every TSR module all kind of rolled into one, so you can see where your influences are. And you can see that you've decided like you're basically going to do something that you used to like. And that's what you like. You can like I said, the art picture. When the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is an S1 callback. That's awesome because he's got an art book in there.
Yeah, and so like some people will get fired up in different ways, and I think the art gets me fired up. Like when I've got a vision in my mind, and then I'm drafting the text as I'm thinking about the image that I have in my mind, and then it's like, okay, well. How can I make the DM fired up about this to convey it to players? And then also if you have an image to show. And then it's also nice because the art's a game within a game. So I put interesting little callbacks and things like that and homages to the people that were foundational to the hobby. I think but just how I feel about it, I have such respect for the early TSR guys. And I just think I'd be remiss if I didn't do that. And I think Gygax certainly created a legacy of that with so many different Gygaxian anagrams in magic items and spells and things of that type. So that there's a tradition in that I really want to continue.
Bob G has a question here. Looking at this, pledge $80 for the hard copy and PDF. Then is it an additional $11 to $13 to get an actual hard copy?
Yeah, that's correct. So what you're effectively doing is, so if you think, so what I do, so I'm in Canada. So if I can't, there's no model in Canada where you can produce books as reasonably and ship them as reasonably as what Drive-Thru/Lightning Source does. So it's cost prohibitive for me to do that here. So my next best option is to basically take the total price, say between $70 and $75, deduct about $5 for shipping, about $12 to create the book, and then the pledge amount is what you see on the Kickstarter. So about approximately $55 US. But $12 to produce plus $5 for shipping, and that brings you to that amount. So otherwise, like international shipping has never been more expensive than it is right now.
It's awful. It's
just dreadful. So this is the only model that I have really available to me to do it the cost would inflate to a point that no one would, I think, be interested. So this is the best of the available models given my specific situation.
Dandelion has a question also. Any thoughts or philosophies on how to successfully mix varying art styles within a project without it becoming jarring?
Yes. So sometimes you have to reel in an artist that may go too cartoony on you. So like what I try to do is when I sit down and I've studied all the first generation, say, of TSR artist, and you can go from almost the comic strip to something, say, photorealistic like Keith Parkinson, and everything in between. And then you have to decide where's your sweet spot from within those extremes. And then when are you willing to break outside of that? I don't like to go too photorealistic because then it sort of seems like a 3D video game, and that's a turnoff. And I don't want to go too cartoon strip because that doesn't take the adventure as seriously as I want it to. And that's just my personal preference. So I've got a lane in there that I enjoy. And normally when I try to recruit artists, it's because I see some of Holloway in them, or I see some of Steve Bissett in them, or I see some of Keith Parkinson in them. And then if we go back and we look through the old TSR modules, you'll see that range. Right. So now you're fitting within a reasonable expectation of what the veteran D&D gamer is accustomed to already. So that's how I go about it. It's not to say it's the only way to go about it, but I have very firm conviction for where I'm at on that point. And that's why you see that consistency across my products.
If you look at some of the early modules, you might have in the same module, you could have Jeff D, who has a very cartoony style, alongside Errol Otis, who has a very weird, pulpy kind of style. And then you might have a Holloway. I mean, they mixed a lot of different styles in some of those early TSR modules also. Yeah,
and I think it's Tom Wham, some of the very cartoony stuff in the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. You know, putting on the sort of mouse ear hat, attempting to go into the rat temple.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's a classic cartoon. Yes,
yeah. Definitely. I mean, we all giggle about that sort of thing, and that's a real contrast to the seriousness of the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, right? So that works because it's a juxtaposition. So so there's that part of it, and then so it's I study the older art for what it's doing, what it's trying to do, what it's trying to communicate. And I like medieval fantasy. That's my jam. I think that's where a lot of OSR gamers are at. So if I can reference medieval style arms and armor, I'm definitely going to try to do that. I can't stand elves with ears like out to here, like they get channel 6 with those bad boys. I can't handle that. It drives me insane. And so I'll like nix that if an artist sends me something along that line. I want more Vulcan than I do channel 6.
Yeah, it's a bit mutant. Now, by the way, I'm going to go back for a second with the screen share here. This is from the Goodman Games Crypts of the Devil Lich for DCC RPG, and it's their shipping costs. And this is coming from the USA, and they're using FedEx because they can do a prepaid VAT and a track shipment. But shipping USA to USA, $8 to $10. Canada, $25 to $30.
Yeah.
EU, $30 to $35. Australia, $35 to $40, and rest of the world, $40 to $45. So this is what Greg is saving you by doing print on demand.
Yeah. And I can tell you, as somebody whose side business is basically buying, selling, and trading RPGs on eBay, and for the last 21 years, prices have never been higher to ship overseas. And Eric and I see that every time. What's the number one reason Kickstarters fail, Eric? I mean, well, besides somebody being a crook, is it they screw up shipping? and then
Right.
they promise they're going to ship anywhere in the world for $10, and then they really research it and they go, oh, wait a second, it costs $50 to ship to UK now, and then they're
Right.
screwed.
Well,
They're absolutely screwed.
and here's the thing. Like, especially if you're somebody who does not plan ahead, shipping costs tend to go up on a year-to-year basis.
That's true.
The infamous Kickstarter for this is Myth and Magic, which we know it existed. We knew the products existed. I actually received my book. Many people did not. And why didn't it get out? Because it was late in arriving, and therefore shipping costs went up. Also, it was flat rate shipping, and international shipping rose dramatically. And the thought was initially, well, just like Mike's example, I'll just charge everybody $10 shipping, and if U.S. shipping is $5 and it's $15 or $20 to ship to Britain, no big deal. Well, net 20 becomes 30 to 40. Then you're fucked.
Brave Halfling's whole entire company went down because he had a Kickstarter where he absolutely misjudged shipping to a horrible extent, and that did, I mean, the whole Brave Halfling gone because he spent every cent he had and he hadn't shipped anything yet because he promised to make separate shipments, not to combine shipments, make separate shipments at I don't know, whatever 3 to 5. I mean, we're going to cover all your shipments. We're going to ship 5 different things for 10
releases. And it's going to be shipped 5 different times, and that included international shipping.
And he charged $10 or something. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was,
and that was it. I mean, it can't be done, guys. And so, yeah, people are much more savvy now. I know Frog God, when we do Kickstarters, we don't charge shipping up front. We wait because it's gotten worse in the United States. They don't just change shipping once a year. They've been given permission by the federal government to change it up to twice a year. They can, matter of fact, I think some years have changed it up to 3 times now. And so you can be totally set. I'm always having to alter my eBay listings now because I say X amount for shipping, and then 3 months later, it's like, oh, we just added another 50 cents to priority packages. And so just so I don't lose money, I have to charge more because you don't want to lose money on that. Definitely.
No, you certainly don't. And again, and that's the one of the things that's great for a drive-through is that a lot of places it'll ship from within that region, so you don't have to get necessarily screwed with the shipping.
Yeah, you don't get fisted that way. I can't agree more with what both of you have said. And so at the end of the day, if somebody's sitting at home watching, just keep in mind, a couple of things I said. Number one, the international shipping. Number two, Kickstarter takes their 8 or 10%. Then most of my bills I'm paying in American dollars once from Canadian converting to American. So I'm losing 25 to 28% depending on the day. So I am trying to do I do all these projects with one arm tied behind my back, and I'm not going to let that slow me down. It's not going to impinge the quality of what I do. And, I'm more than happy to like with Highfell, I went in the red to give birth to that thing, but if that's what I got to do, then that's what I'm going to do. I'll make it back over time, but I'm committed to facilitating these things, and I love a good obstacle. It's just the nature of my personality.
Bob, we weren't picking. It was a gift
that
you brought up, and I figured we should just. I mean, I had an example of how the shipping was, and I figured let me go and just pull it up. That's all. But
I didn't take it as a complaint, but it is a great opportunity for a clarification, and that's how I looked at the comment for sure.
And Eric and I are connoisseurs of bad Kickstarters, and over the years, I think we've narrowed it down to underestimating shipping, having way too much stuff. In other words, we're also going to have T-shirts, miniatures, frisbees, and drink cups. That'll get you. What are some of the other ones? Those are the big. Oh, I'm going to start my own game company now because I made so much money on this Kickstarter. I only wanted 10,000. I made 50,000. I'm going to start my own game company, and instead of just getting the Kickstarter done and out to everybody because nobody cares about game company. So yes, you've managed to avoid all the very common missteps that people make when they fail at the Kickstarter, and then just
here's the other thing that I didn't realize this until I did all these fireside chats for Zine Quest in February. But when they include shipping, like when you get the drop down menu on Kickstarter to add $5 shipping, that's actually adding to the Kickstarter total of monies raised.
Yep.
So it's illusionary, really, if you
Yes.
think about it, because that's not money going to complete the project. That's money going to ship the project. It really shouldn't even be counted toward the project goals, but it is.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. 24,656. We only need $350. Let's do it, people.
Wow.
I feel like Jerry Lewis here to telethon, but
this is honestly like this is. I feel I'm really excited about this. I think this is something that given what a crappy 2020 everyone had, I think this is a great opportunity to get excited about something. I think it's great for our community very specifically, and I'm thrilled. I'm excited and humbled by the support everyone has shown in me, and I just want everyone to know that.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, the highest compliment I can give is that I'm upset that I can't run them all. Because we've done Highfell now for I think it was a year in September or October, and I'm just sitting there going, man, I just don't think I'm gonna be able to run the rest of them because they take so long. It just drives me crazy that you're coming out with more content that I'm probably never going to get to now, unless because I could see doing Highfell for another year, 2 years or so.
Oh, for sure. And the other part of my publication rate is very slow. So like I'm like a once every three years probably averaging. So that's the other part of it is I'm in a position where I'm not doing this for a living. I do it for fun. I hope that comes out in the material, and that's really sort of what it's about for me.
There's another question here from Doom Bunny. He said, any thoughts on finding the right victims players for the mega dungeoning long haul? Actually, I have an answer for this too after Greg. I find a lot of online players don't have the temperament for it.
Well, I think so. The question I would say, have you set the stage for the experience? So like if I'm going to sit down at a table and play, I'd certainly appreciate if somebody says, hey, this is like a 32 pager. We're looking at maybe, 3, 4, 6 sessions. And then I know what to expect, and off we go. And if someone is saying, okay, well, this is going to be a larger campaign, and we're going to, you're going to have an opportunity to experience, hex crawling and dungeon crawling, and it's going to be over a larger campaign. You'll probably play multiple characters in multiple parties. Then you're setting the expectation for play. Now, I think, gamer attention spans are notoriously short. So there's that part of it. So I think that people will engage in the game, and they'll, tensions will wane. But that's just part of gaming too, I think.
Right. I know the way I approached Highfell and honestly 2020. So we started Highfell in the waning months of 2019, and the way I approached it was going to be whoever shows up gets to adventure, and we're going to kind of do almost a Western Marches types campaign. You're going to go up there, whoever shows up, you go up there. If you need somebody, you hire henchmen to fill those positions, and then by the end of the adventure, you need to be back in Thatcham.
That's exactly how you do it.
The next time we do it different. Now, 2020 screwed me up because obviously I had a lot of the time I think I had about 8 players, which got down to 3 because they were all local. And at that point, you couldn't travel anymore. People weren't really adventuring face-to-face. And I still wanted to do a face-to-face campaign even during COVID. So now we're at a core group. There's 3 others plus me. But that's the way I approached it first, was that whoever shows up with your character, you're going to go. And that worked out really, really well because the way the plot lines work out, you don't have to – it's not necessary you have one single group the entire time. And I think it works pretty good, almost the Mission Impossible approach, where you're like, okay, this time we're going to do this, we're gonna need this, we're gonna need a thief, a couple mages, and a priest. I even had my characters roll up 2 characters each, and I said that way roll totally different characters, that way whatever you need at the time will be available for you. Now it's worked out, like I said, because of 2020 and COVID, they ended up working the same character the whole time. So they all have an 8th level character and a 1st level character that hasn't gone on any adventures yet. But that's the way I would approach it. If it seems like it's too huge, it's like don't eat the elephant, eat the elephant in small bites, not one bite. Just say, look, we're just going to do an adventure here. If you like it, we're going to do another one. And then if another guy wants to hop in adventure 3, yeah, he can hop in. You bring your character. Yeah, and you never know. By the time you're through, you may end up with a totally different group than what you started out with, just because everybody's kind of hopping in and hopping out. And as Greg said, I mean, you'll find people that get excited about it and really into it because gamers do have short attention spans. We had some people, high fell, that were like, they played once and they loved it, and we never saw them again. So, it just didn't appeal to them. Some people, they played over and over again. They liked it, but because of COVID, they couldn't travel anymore. They weren't able to show up. And then we had your three core people in my group that are like, yeah, they loved it. They're absolutely bought into everything high fell, and they're here every time we game once a month, and they're there. So I would approach it. Whoever shows up plays, and the way Greg's dungeons are set up, they're very episodic in that way. You could, if you do Barrowmaze, you just go and clear out one part of Barrowmaze, and the next time you can go to a totally different part of Barrowmaze, or just explore the moors up above, and all the little. Those are all mini. There's like 20 or 30 mini dungeons just above there you can go through. And Archaea is probably the best suited for this because it's basically like 50 different dungeon layers all in one little valley. Just go where one time you may have a totally different group of characters. We're going to go clear out this area over here where there's kobolds, or we're going to go investigate. There's a bunch of snake cultists up here. Make the dungeon your own. Decide we're going to, just do this, and then just go from there. And then when you've done it 10 times and 3 guys have shown up the whole time, that's your core group, and then if somebody else shows up, hey, you can join these 3 guys, but they've been eventually the longest, so they're going to set the agenda.
Yeah, that's right. And the other part too is, so if you're playing, say, an online game and you find people, so if you don't think they have the temperament for it, then follow Mike's advice and set it up that way. So if you have a pool of, say, 12 players and 6 show up on any given night, and it happens to be 6 fighters, then that's perfectly fine, but play to the style of 6 fighters. Sure. Don't go playing like you have a sleep spell in your back pocket, or you've got a bunch of clerics that can heal the fires. Play in a manner, encourage your players to play in the manner to their group that night. And I think a lot of people sort of forget that point because, hey, we're excited and we want to play, and away you go. And then before you make a bad decision, and then you have a TPK.
Well, and I think something else too, especially if you're going to be dealing with that idea of drop in, drop out, is time management. You understood. All right, we're going to be gaming Saturday nights from 9 to 12:30. Well, you know what? Sometime around 12 o'clock, about 30 minutes before you're going to wrap up, start figuring out where that natural wrap-up spot is, and try to figure out where, hey, folks, you know what? This might be a good time for you all to head back to town. Because if you have a group that isn't the same core showing up 90% of the time, you don't want to be like, you can do it with a regular group. You can go, all right, yeah, we have the big event, the big combat's going to happen. You know what? It's probably at least 2 hours right there. It's a big encounter. Why don't you guys wait till next week? You can't do the same. You can't when you want your players to go back to home base beforehand. So it's a bit of a timing thing. Just to be cognizant of where you are in the adventure. So I actually think you have to know the adventure maybe a little bit better than if you were running it for a steady group of players, because your steady group, you always know where they're going to go 9 times out of 10. You might be herding cats, but you kind of still know what your cats like to do. But if it's
veteran game, like you make such a great point, and the example I use with my players was this. So if you're like 15 minutes away from ending your session, or 20 minutes, or whatever it might be, it's the equivalent of like the 2-minute warning in a football game. You don't want to allow a cheap touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game, nor do you want to get your player killed with 15 minutes left in your session in the one more room philosophy. So you want to be smarter as your session draws to a close, not more opportunistic or what have you. So for sure, I agree.
I will say one thing we've done this campaign that I've dabbled in. My other campaigns, I had back when Blogspot was high, I had a Blogspot for a couple of my campaigns. We have a Facebook page dedicated to Highfell, and we post every session and also post interesting tidbits. The funny thing is, we have a lot of people on the Highfield page now that don't even play in the campaign. They just like to read the descriptions. And one guy,
people love it.
I sent me a message, and he said that, like, yeah, I just like, can I get put on your page for updates, because I just like reading it, because it just seems like such a cool old school campaign. Because I asked him, I said, well, you're in a DFW area, do you want to play with us? He's like, no, I just like reading your descriptions because it's fun. But I found a Facebook page helps a lot, because it really helps coordinating stuff like that. So if you're able to get a Facebook page, you can have a private group, and so you can do whatever you want in private groups. I don't think they censor you yet, although I'm sure Zuckerberg's looking for a way to do that eventually. But yeah, get a private group, just have people set up and say, look, what day can everybody meet? And also, it's a great repository for knowledge. You say, look, here's what happened last session, because believe me, my players forget. I haven't posted the last 2 sessions, and they all told me this week they don't remember what happened last 2 sessions. I'm like, okay, I'll post the updates before Friday because you guys are idiots. But yes,
having a group chat or a Facebook group or something is the way to go for sure. And that way you can players say they miss a session or two, pardon me, they can go and read the updates and figure, okay, well, this is what you did and whatever.
There's a couple more questions here.
Lawyer. Yeah. Joe the Lawyer, since so many of us are playing online now, are you planning on making your maps for Roll20 all filled in with monsters and dynamic lighting? Joe, who the fuck uses dynamic lighting? You're spoiled if you've seen that. Matt Jackson does that shit, and now you want your hands held.
I want my dynamic lighting.
Here's the thing. So I personally, I've never played on Roll20. So that's my starting point. My second point is he's right. So I should have that addressed. And I guess that's some ageism on my part, is that I really strongly prefer playing face to face. And so number one, I'm always thinking paper instead of electronic. And that's a mistake. And then I'm thinking face-to-face instead of virtual tabletop, and that's my second mistake. So if there's anywhere I need to pull up my socks, it's in those two areas, and he's right, and I will endeavor to do that.
And then we had another question there, Eric. I think you...
No, go ahead. I'm actually going to...
So Zachary says just went back to drive-through to download Highfield, take another look, and it's gone. Not listed on there anymore. It's still in my library purchase, but found the store page or searchable. There's a reason for that, right, Greg?
Yeah, there is. So there's two things going on. So I have I just received the I made a couple copy edits to Highfell, and that's the reason why it's down. So, and I just got the paper proof today. The other part is I've done the 5th edition of Highfell, and there were a couple images that didn't get lined up properly in the monster section. So I'm addressing that tomorrow, and then I'll get that put into drive-through, and I'll get that proof. So don't worry, it's coming. I just wanted to address a couple small things that were annoying me, and I want to make sure it's spot on moving forward.
So not a conspiracy.
No,
not yet.
I'm sure someone will find a conspiracy. But
it wasn't a Dr. Seuss book. We're sorry.
Yeah. So if anybody in the fall, I teach a very large undergraduate course, and my time is mostly swamped with doing that. So if it doesn't happen, something like that, like addressing something on drive-through or whatever, if it doesn't happen before September, then it's probably not going to happen until after December. So that's the reason why that's all happening now. And I want it all addressed before the Kickstarter ends.
Dude, do you ever date like girls and stuff? Because you're too damn busy. I don't know where you find time to do anything between school and doing this stuff. So that's amazing.
Yeah, so you just got to prioritize, and there's a time for everything.
All right.
I didn't mean to get personal. I was just joking.
Just a reminder: this podcast, this live stream is a sausage fest. So, Greg, you're not going to be eligible. Women are going to not hear the fact that you're eligible and have no time. because none of them are really watching this, or very few of them are.
Well, the ones that watch our show aren't eligible when they're all married, so
Well,
right
that's
there.
true too.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, point taken.
You don't have any. We don't. I'm sorry, we don't have any single women here. Otherwise, we'd set you up, man. We'd do you right if we did. But no, they're all married. Sorry, man.
Oh well.
Well, gosh, it's been so great. We've spent an hour and a half talking about Dwarrowdeep, and we'll spend more time if the questions come up. But right now, we want to throw some issues in the OSR, and then we'll have Greg pop in because he's Kickstarter friendly and Kickstarter knowledgeable too. So I just broke this news to Eric before the show, and he had not heard of it. And we had a good little quick discussion. But I'm going to throw this out here, and then I want y'all's opinion on it. I kind of know Eric's opinion, but we'll see what Greg says. So, for those who watched our show a few weeks ago, we reviewed the James Raggi broadcast where he basically was walking around in a park in Finland in the cold the cold dark, and saying that he's going to redo his entire company and he wants to hire people on spec only, and he's going to change the way everything's. It was very grandiose, very very interesting.
It was cringeful.
It was rough. It was a rough one, very rough, because he was not really on script. I have a feeling he was kind of just riffing, and so this follow-up, he has this follow-up in the last week or so, which I thought was really interesting. I'm going to read it from first billable expenses have been submitted on this release that's finally going to bury this company 6 feet under. It's iffy if it'll be done in time for the upcoming release cycle, but you'll know it when you see it. Think of the biggest blundering shot ourselves in the foot release we've ever done, and I do believe it's coming to mine is different from what's coming to all of your minds, and this is going to top it. I say that knowing full well what causes the problems is never what I thought would cause the problems. There are potentially 2 that might do it in the upcoming release cycle, but I think this one will be the chef's kiss of what the fuck were they thinking. As soon as it was pitched to me, I immediately thought this is exactly the kind of problem you don't need. This is exactly why LOTFP was born to tackle. So either do it or quit. So basically, he is, say what you want about the guy. He is a master promoter because he's basically saying, "Look, I did this walk in the wilderness thing. I'm gonna redo the company. I've found something that's gonna end my company. It's that controversial and that crazy." Eric, what do you think? Is this hype, or is this Raggi hype, or is he really gonna do what I think he's gonna do?
Oh, so John Miller said Raggi clarified on Facebook that the author would not be the source of the problem.
It's not Zach. It's not Zach Smith.
So here, I'm gonna spitball this and say, if the printer might be the issue, then it's got to be some like body piercings on private parts of the lower extremity area, or somebody's penis sliced in half. There's got to be something.
Yeah, he did reference the fact that the printer might send it back. So I don't know if that's hyperbole or not either. So we'll see.
The thing is, there are shock jocks in our hobby, and there are shock jocks, and James is a capital S shock jock. He knows how to get attention. He knew with Zach how to game the Ennies a couple of years back. He knows how to make great titles for his adventures that will get people talking about it. So he's getting people talking about this shit, and it's not even written yet, right? It was a proposal. If he knew about this earlier, he would have talked about it earlier. So this is something that just came up. So he's already spinning it, which is not stupid on his part. We're talking about it. But I don't know. It's got to be the art that's going to make this bad-ish, I guess.
Well, he's, by the way, Dwarrowdeep's at 24/7. Thank you. So we're 2:30 away from 25 American. So keep it coming, folks. Greg, I think you talked about your opinion of Raggy before, and he's the Howard Stern of gaming, of pretty much.
Like in my history and culture of RPGs course, over the years, I've had a number of people join my class through sort of web chat just to ask questions and that sort of thing. And James joined my class quite a few years ago now, and he was very friendly and very gracious, and the students quite enjoyed speaking to him. So that I haven't had much contact with him other than that. I just think you want to be careful. Like I don't think you want. I think you make your life more difficult if you go down the road of dog daring everything you do. So it's like the first one's a dog dare and the second one's a double dog dare. Then you get to you jump right to the quadruple dog dare from there. And I think that's sort of a rabbit hole. And I'm not, so everyone has a right to do the things they want to do, of course. And if that's your jam, and so be it. But it's not one that I want to go down. But my interaction with him was positive, and he was very gracious.
I think I've talked to James quite a bit online, just emails, and I have no problem with James at all. I think he's in his particular area. He is the master promoter of all things.
Oh yeah,
D&D. But I agree with you, because Eric and I have talked before about the fact that I think what James needs to do is just write better stuff, because some of his early stuff was really good. Grinding Gear, Hammers of the God, Death Frost Doom, and it seems like you said, he got in this path of oh man, I gotta be way controversial. I gotta have a turd on the cover of the Monolith Out of Time, because I gotta offend just to offend, when the dude's an okay writer. Now I know it's been alluded to he might have writer's block right now, which if that's the case, it sucks. But yeah, he could do a more traditional dungeon without all the over the top grand guignol nutcase stuff, and still sell quite a few copies. This may be a case of him just trying to one up himself.
Yeah.
Well, I think that with the year he had in 2020 and the fiasco in 2019 with Zach Smith, he's trying to. It's like he's afraid his company is laying on the slab right now, and we've got the paddles out, and he wants it cranked up to 11 when the shot goes, and for maximum effect. I think that's what we're looking at. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. He's firing for effect, no doubt about that.
Yeah. If nothing else, it's going to be physically, it's going to be amazing. It might be offensive, but it's going to be an amazing physical quality. Is it going to be usable in your campaign? No. If you want usable, you buy Greg's shit, okay? And you'll have stuff that you can use with any group at any table. With James, most of the recent stuff from Lamentations is it's stuff that I want to put on my bookshelf.
It looks pretty. Looks great. I mean, I have a lot of the recent Lamentations stuff. It looks great, but man, you read it and you're like, it's unplayable as written, unless you want to do a one shot where everybody dies at the end. Then it's great. Oh, great! Somebody took their pledge away. Stop this! Stop trying to mess with me.
They're fucking.
That's 24/60. Oh, there we go. It's back. Yes. Okay. They rethought it and they put it back. Okay. We're 24/7/27. Okay. Whew. That was I was gonna get Medieval on their ass. Come on, man. Let's back this thing. Let's get this thing going. So that was my contribution. Do we have was there another piece of? Oh, there was the Zach Smith lawsuit. Do you want to summarize that again, Eric? And I don't think we've seen anything new with that, have we? That's just kind of just laying out there.
We haven't. Zach Smith's latest lawsuit, because remember he is suing his estranged. I don't think he's ex yet. Wife Mandy in Canada, because apparently it's easier to sue people in Canada for.
Yeah, you guys don't have free speech in Canada, Greg. I hate to tell you, you guys do not have free speech.
This is not new information for me. I mean, I'm
I see you post about it quite a bit. That you do not have free speech in Canada. It's
Well, see, the thing is, we're right now. I don't want to sidetrack the discussion, but just a little sidebar. We're right up at the point that I think we could be facing some issues that you're addressing right now in the U.S. and and I think it's just primed for infringement of free speech and infringement of free inquiry at universities, and that I'm concerned. I'm concerned for people across the spectrum, regardless of where they might stand. People have the right to, you have to have that one place in society where people can stand and say things contrary to societal norms and beliefs, and universities are that place. And if universities self-censor like they're doing in Portland, or there's a direct infringement, then I think society at large should be concerned. That's my little sidebar. Sorry.
No,
that's okay.
That's a good point.
That's good. But by the way, apparently the quote of the night is from John Miller: "If you want usable, you buy Greg's shit." Eric Tenkar. There, we're gonna put because it's very good shit, man, and it's usable shit as opposed to unusable but pretty shit coming from Lamentations. But that's
yeah,
totally,
you can use it. Feel free to use that quote on the back of the book, Greg. If you want to use it,
I've yoinked that twice since you brought it up.
That's a definite one to go on.
I mean, to actually talk about what Greg just brought up. I mean, one of the most offensive things that I've seen is the idea that we need safe spaces like everywhere, because real life doesn't have safe spaces. You don't have safety helmets and little bumpers and like you don't walk down the street wearing elbow pads and knee pads in case you fall. Giving people and kids and teens and young adults safe spaces so they never hear thoughts that differ with their own presumptions is doing a disservice to them when they get out to the real fucking world of business and living and relationships, and they realize, oh wait, there's other people's opinions out there too that matter. Mm-hmm. I'm not automatically right, but I was told I was because I was in my safe zone. So that's a little personal.
Yeah, I can confirm there are no safe spaces in the cold, dark environment.
There you go.
Unless you're in academia, then there's lots of safe spaces because you go on campus and join a university, and that way you don't live in the real world for 30 or 40 years. Because
see, you're trying to wind me up right now, and I don't appreciate it.
It was that obvious. Damn. Well, no, if it was been obvious, I just would have said Star Wars, and then you'd have gone on a 30-minute rant, and we would have been.
I might have.
We could just sit back, and we wouldn't have to worry about the show anymore. It's like, yeah. Star Wars. How about Star Wars? You want us to get started on Star Wars, Greg? I mean, you're a big Star Wars fan, correct?
I am, yeah. And it's because I'm a fan that I'm disappointed, and then you overlap everything else that's going on in terms of public discourse and what you can say and what you can't say and who can say it and when, and then the double speak when people do, and some people are protected and some people are not. And I just think that that's the hypocrisy that needs to be called out. And I think it's for everyone's benefit, for the free exchange of ideas across the spectrum, that we call those things out.
I had this revelation about Star Wars today. I was just reading a bunch of stuff about the recent stuff with Disney and just this and that. I think the biggest problem with Star Wars is because it was absolutely it came out of nowhere, right? Because it's this dumb little 70 movie that came out in 77 that it was a throwaway, that they didn't think it was going to be big. They didn't think it was going to be nobody anything, and it just absolutely blew up out of nowhere. Made Lucas a lot of money, made him a much oversized figure in movies than he would have been if Star Wars had been a failure. There was a movie that came out around the same time. It had John Boy Walton. I can't remember the actor. It was called from whatever.
I saw that recently. It's either on Netflix or on Amazon. My God, it fucking sucked.
But it could have been good. It could have been good, and it could have been Star Wars if it had just been a little better, and they'd been a little more writing. And I just always think about that movie because I think what the divergent paths would have been in our society if that had been a big hit, and Star Wars would have been just a big zero. But I think because the fact that it came out of nowhere, and then you had the original trilogy, and once it was wrapped up, everybody was just like, "Wow, that was great," and you didn't really have any expectation anything else was ever going to happen. Yeah, Lucas is always talking about he's going to make more movies, but you always suspected it was going to be a continuation, not a prequel, right? And so then the prequels come, and they're not very good. I mean, Star Wars fans, they'll accept anything, a lot of them, because they're just like, it's Star Wars. And I remember seeing a review for the first Star Wars prequel, and a guy was in line, and he'd saw the movie and said, "What did you think about it?" And he said, "Well, it was a Star Wars movie." And that's what I think the opinion of most people was, look, at least it was Star Wars. I haven't seen anything since 1983. It was great to finally see one. So you skip forward to now, and I think we're expecting too much out of Star Wars now, because it really is still just kind of is this cheapo little space opera that really is not very well written. I mean, it's got great visual effects. The effects are great. It's become iconic just because, it's part of our youth, but it's still not a very well written story. And the last trilogy was kind of pretty Are we just giving it really an outsized opinion of? And I started thinking about, why do we worry about Star Wars so much? Tell us, Greg, why do we worry about it that much? Should we not worry about it that much, or are we worrying about it too much?
Well, it depends. If you consider Star Wars a form of entertainment media, then you should be thinking, it could probably do better. If you're thinking of Star Wars not as entertainment media, but as a political platform, which I think that's what it is, then I think you can take your expectations and just put them off to the side, because it's not entertainment media anymore. They're trying to forward a particular agenda, and I think their actions communicate that. So, but why are we bitter about it? Well, Star Wars is a lot like Dungeons and Dragons insofar as it pulled from all kinds of different aspects of historical culture and popular culture that resonate with humanity. Like these deep inside them are stories that we have told and we've retold generation after generation after generation to each other. And so when they come forward and wow, they have all these interesting things so we have like dogfight scenes that sort of look like World War II, but now they're in space, and we've got little green men from Mars, and we've got the hero's journey, the farm boy who makes good, and this sort of thing, and then we internalize them because we saw them for the first time as young people, and then when we see the creative degradation of these stories over time, when they don't to me, Disney Star Wars is such a massive outfit, they should never have a flop. How can, with all the creative wherewithal and the resources that you can bring to a Star Wars film, how is it possible to have a flop? I don't understand it. And the other part of it is, why would you ever let something go that you think might be a flop? Because the franchise is too valuable to bugger. Mm-hmm. So, right. But they don't have that view at all, because it's not about entertainment media anymore. It's a political platform.
It's no longer about the story. It's about the message.
Yes.
And which is strange, because why was The Mandalorian so successful for these past 2 seasons? Because they went back to telling a story, and any kind of message that was hidden behind the story was probably hidden pretty well. You weren't getting slapped over the head with the message, but I can't say that about some of the latest movies.
Well, one of the things about Mandalorian is the 2 guys that are behind it are absolute fans. Unlike Greg's favorite kick clown, Kathleen Kennedy, who's just she's a suit, right? I mean, she's a suit, the guys behind Mandalorian are absolute fans. They have all kinds of callbacks and inside info, and that's what and I think Greg and I have the same opinion about this. We talked about it. By the way, we talked about it in his show. Greg also has a show. Let's pimp Greg's show. He has a podcast also periodically on Wednesday nights.
OSR Blether.
or sorry, Blether, which is a great name. But no, they also we talk about what somebody thinks about the material. They obviously have a great respect for the material, and they're like Eric said, they're actually writing a story. And it wasn't clear that there was really any agenda to it. It's just a great, space opera type story that also has all these callbacks to some of the original stuff. And and yeah, we all looked at that and said, this is what Star Wars needs to be. Why is that so hard to get right? Why can't we just say this is what we need to do? And I was going to say, I got sidetracked there. Great. My opinion is Mandalorian saved the Star Wars universe. I mean, I absolutely believe that's true.
Oh, what?
I think Disney should just sit down and cut Filoni and Favreau a check. How much do you want? How many zeros? Because they literally absolutely saved it. We were at the point where they had canceled any Star Wars projects at all. They were all canceled. I don't care what they said. They were all on hiatus, which is basically we're not going to do them anymore. Solo had been a flop. The movies weren't really getting what they wanted to, and they were gonna mothball Star Wars for a while. And then the Mandalorian came out, and boom! Next thing you know, 6 projects. We're gonna do this. We've got all this stuff coming out. There is no question in my mind that the Mandalorian saved the franchise.
Yeah, and even the Mandalorian, it was very good, but it wasn't outstanding. But the thing that they got right was fan service. So back in the late 70s, early 80s, when Star Wars was new, you didn't have to do fan service because there was nothing to do fan service to. But now you have to do it. Now you can't overdo it, and it's the same thing in doing something like Barrowmaze. You have to have a little bit of fan service in there. And quite honestly, I geek out on stuff like that. So what do you think, Eric?
Well, before we get to that, I want to answer a question here. Battle Beyond the Stars.
Battle Beyond the Stars
is the movie that John Boy Walton.
Robert Vaughn, George Papard, John Saxon. It's a great lineup of B movie actors, but honestly, Star Wars was a bunch of B movie actors when it came out too. So it kind of had the same Sybil Danning, and these are all B movie dudes. But yes, it's worth catching just for the what if concept. What if this had actually hit, and will we have that kind of movie also? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but that's
no, it's okay. I mean, I look at the Mandalorian renewed my love of Star Wars. I enjoyed the initial trilogy. I suffered through the episodes 1 through 3 when my son was younger because he thought they were fucking awesome. Who taught you that language? My father told me how to use it. And the last trilogy, I did not watch until it was like on demand on Netflix, I believe it was, and I was sick, so I didn't give a shit what I was watching. What?
Let's just blame Rian Johnson because look, the first movie was a callback. It wasn't terrible. My granddaughter is the greatest Star Wars fan of all time. She's seen the original trilogy 100 times, loves it. Loved the first movie. Loved the fact that Daisy Ridley was the star. It's a girl she could look up to. Everything was fine. First movie, yeah, it wasn't very imaginative, but he was basically just doing a remake of a movie that came out 40 years ago. Rian Johnson ruined everything when he thought he would subvert the space opera, and I've gone on record as saying I think Rian Johnson's a fine director, but he does like to subvert. Looper was a subversion of time travel movies. Brick was a subversion of noir movies. Knives Out was a subversion of drawing room mysteries. You don't need to subvert Star Wars. It's a space opera. Just tell the damn story.
Especially with the second installment, that's where you take the characters that you've introduced in installment 1, and now you deepen the emotional and personal engagement with those characters. And he dropped the ball. So then now what the hell do you do for the third movie? And so he just derailed the whole thing. And it's again
because J.J. Abrams took half the last movie trying to undo everything that Rian Johnson did in the second movie, which is not what you do. It was. So let's just put the blame where it goes, because honestly, we saw Solo. We didn't think Solo was a terrible movie. My granddaughter and I loved it. I mean, it was fun. It's what it is. What it was. It's just a little. I mean, it got hammered because it came out after the second movie, which everybody that was a fan hated because it was terrible. Let's just face it. It was just a bad take on the whole story. I mean. And some of the people would say, "Oh, well, Star Wars needs to grow up." No, it doesn't. It doesn't need to grow up. It doesn't need to subvert. It needs to entertain. And that's what they lost when they went right. And somebody should have seen this coming and said, "We're not releasing this movie." And like you're saying, Greg, that's something that it's mind-boggling. They didn't see this and think, "Are people really going to like this?" Or is this just a bunch of people that were just like, "Oh my God, it's great because it's just so subversive"? Didn't not one person sit down and say, people really aren't like this movie. It's just too weird. It's got too much weird shit in it. And
I don't think they care. They genuinely don't. Shockingly, it's not about profit. It's about the message, and they're okay taking it on the nose. Like if you look at how all their YouTube videos get downvoted, like it's like 17,000 downvotes to maybe 1,500 upvotes, and people are just putting the same message over and over because they're tired of the hypocrisy within. So it's an organizational culture that is a problem, and then it's a creatively bereft group. So they're a bit like in modern Dungeons and Dragons for me. They're self-referencing rather than, like, one of the things that Dave Filoni said is that he was asked, how often do you watch Star Wars? And he said, I never watch Star Wars. And the point being that he doesn't want to narrow his vision in terms of what it can do. And I think once you start to become self-referencing, you become creatively bereft. So you need to read you need to read more widely and then bring those influences into the thing that you're creating.
No, I
would agree with that. Yeah. And the thing is, if you don't even know the source material that you're going to be working with, how can you be authentic to the source material? Can you put your own spin on it? Yes. But you still have to be authentic to the material that it's coming from.
Yes, you do.
Well, bringing this back around. I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say the reason why, like, they take Star Trek and they advance the timeline hundreds of years in the future is so that they don't have to know any of the cultural history of Star Trek at all. And it's like nothing in Hollywood happened before 2016. So you can't look to the depiction of, say, Catherine Janeway in Star Trek Voyager, which to me is phenomenal. That's exactly how you show a woman in command. They just don't care about that stuff. They go a different direction with it, and it doesn't resonate with me. And I like a good protagonist, regardless of who it is.
So bring this back to D&D. When are we reaching that point with the current crop of Wizards of the Coast? Are they reaching the point where, okay, we're not going to refer back to, because it seems like they're dumping more and more of what we consider old school or OSR elements in favor of, let's make this group happy. Let's make this group happy. And I think the difference between D&D and Star Wars is you can't make your own Star Wars movies. I mean, we can't. Us three, we couldn't do it. But we can make our own D&D campaigns. We don't have to pay attention to anything that Wizards of the Coast is doing. They can do whatever they want. We could just say, yeah, whatever, we're going to do this. Star Wars, you really can't, right? I mean, you don't have any control over that. But we're getting to the point with Wizards of the Coast and D&D where they're basically going to just tell us to F off, right? I mean, we're the people they don't want to service anymore. We're the old guard. We're the old, the old way of thinking. And at a certain point, we're not going to be welcome.
Well, there's different ways of thinking through that question. To me, like I notice it, like you can notice in the mechanics, but I notice it most in the art. And as soon as for example, if the armor and weapons become completely unrealistic, as in that person couldn't legitimately lift the tip of that sword off the floor, it's so ginormously huge. Once you start doing that, you're not in the realm of medieval fantasy anymore. You're in the realm of the fantastical. And the fantastical just continues to depart further and further and further away from the historical backdrop that informed it in the first place. And I think, in my opinion, you have to be very careful, because that gets back to the double dog situation, where you just abstract to the point where this just looks dumb, and then if it looks dumb, odds are it may not be playing in a manner that is simple and elegant at the table, allowing for role play and exploration and combat and all these different things. So I just think it's an important thing to keep in mind. And if I was marshaling the franchise, it would there's this idea that they want to continuously remake the wheel, but eventually you just get back to the point that the wheel was the most efficient way of going about it in the first place. Mm-hmm. So that if I was speaking to your point directly, Mike, that's probably where I'd go.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because Eric and I talk about all the time about how Wizards of the Coast will make a change, but it doesn't necessarily affect our game. It's troubling to see. Okay, we're gonna have wheelchair accessible dungeons. Okay, I mean it doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect my game. It's a weird flex. I mean, if that's what you want to do to make that segment people happy, I guess. I know people that are handicapped that have not called for wheelchair accessible dungeons, but if they feel like that's something that they want to do, fine. It doesn't affect my game. But that kind of thing, I think, just pushes them farther and farther away from what the average fan wants to. We're going to cater to this small group over here. We're going to cater to this group. We're going to cater to this group. And at a certain point, it's got to affect your core audience.
It will. And the other part is, the question isn't that was done. It's the question why it was done. Mm-hmm. And I think if we go back to the discussion of, do we have entertainment media or is it a political platform, then I think you probably have your answer. Now, if somebody, I want to make it really clear, like if I was going to play at a table and someone had a physical disability and they're like, I'd like to play in a wheelchair, or I'd like to create a version of Tensor's floating disc and float around on it, or I even read this on one of the Facebook groups. Somebody said, I am in a wheelchair, and quite honestly, sitting down at a table, getting to play somebody that's able-bodied is my primary attraction to playing Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. And so, there are different ways of looking at it for sure. So it did make me wring my hands a bit when I read all that.
Yeah. I'm going to sound like my cardiologist when he was referring to wearing masks once you're vaccinated. It's all about the signal. It's not, double mask.
Triple mask. Well, at what point did the mask get just super awesome? I mean, come on. You got to triple mask that baby.
Yeah.
Well, it's just, but it was strange to hear that coming from a medical professional. Not the idea that masks are not necessarily effective, because he was comparing like New York to Florida, which had a mask mandate. Yeah. But to see my doc talk about signaling, I was like, all right.
I wonder how many. Well, I'm not going to get political, but my doctor's not on board with a lot of stuff. You should hear him talk. I'd probably cost him his job if I taped his stuff. But yeah, I think that a lot of this is especially with the D&D stuff. It's as Greg says, it's driven from not trying to make the game better. Let's put it that way.
Right.
That's not the core there. It's to signal to a certain segment that, hey, we're what I always call performative activism. We're not really doing anything, but we're going to pretend like we're doing something because it's going to make us look really awesome.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have evil arcs anymore, because you might possibly construe that the wrong way, even though we really didn't do anything, because you can play the game however you want to play anyway, where we're not really actually doing anything to change your game, but we're going to pretend like we just did something kick ass.
Well, which is again why I personally believe that we're not going to see a 6th edition of D&D. We're just going to see stealth changes to the rules and maybe a new printing of the rules, but it's still going to be the 5e engine. That's not going to change. There's no reason to change the engine. It's just you're going to change the fluff, or
particularly if they're ramping up. If they're ramping up a movie, if they're ramping up a video game, I mean, it's going to be using that engine. It's going to look and feel, and it's not going to change. I don't think initially, at least for a while.
25,000.
Huzzah!
Oh,
25. Oh, that took me off the hook. Thank God. I was looking at my pocket, see if I had an extra $600 to spend. No, I'm just kidding. No, I knew you were going to hit 25. I knew it. I didn't tell people to buy. I didn't tell people to buy your stuff. I knew it was going to happen.
No, not at all. But again, remember, Craig stuff is good shit, man.
It's good. Yes, that's not the exact quote. The exact quote's better than that. Come on, man.
Yeah, I know, but you can. you can never do it as well the second time as you did it the first time.
No, definitely.
You know, when it's totally spur of the moment, I expect to hear that as somebody's ringtone down the line. When I go to convention, I want to hear that from the phone ringing.
So we're going a couple hours here. So this is the obligatory because you did it to me when I was on your show. This is the obligatory Dallas Cowboys question.
Okay.
Oh Jesus!
I'm ready. I was hoping we were going to end with that.
So Dak Prescott, he was just signed to the biggest contract NFL quarterback in history. Good, bad. What do you think? Give me your take on that.
The only thing I really like about it is that it's like it wasn't the what is it, the second or third Romo contract where they'll be paying for it for years and years and years. And you know, I'm of the camp because I played college football, so the injury he had is a severe one, and you know where he will be in 3 more years of NFL caliber football, who knows? And if they can get out of that contract in 4 years, I think that's a terrific play. And, you know, it seems like there's enough flexibility in it where he is getting paid market value and yet they're not completely hamstrung by the contract. So I guess is my answer. I'm not waving pom-poms over here.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
No. I want to know: is it guaranteed money?
It's guaranteed. Oh yeah, it's guaranteed.
That's
with like a $66 million signing bonus.
Yeah, 160.
As a New Yorker, I've seen guaranteed contracts. Well,
it is only as Greg said. The Cowboys wanted 5 years. He only wanted 4. I agree with Greg on this. I think it's best. For some reason, we have this tendency in sports to sign these guys to lifetime contracts. And how many times? I mean, who's the New York Met that was getting paid for 30 years after he retired because they had some crazy contract? Mookie, was it Mookie? No, it was
Mookie, but A-Rod was like fucking
it's just crazy.
Contract.
So I don't have a problem with shorter contracts. Yes, it may cost you more in the long run, but you actually have a chance to prove that you're worth the contract. Look what happened in the offseason to 2 teams. Jared Goff, who was signed to a long-term contract by the Rams, who finally got tired of him so much they just traded him off to Detroit. Good Lord. And who was the other big? The guy for the Eagles.
Carson Wentz.
Oh, Carson Wentz was traded.
Yes.
Here, get rid of him. 3rd round pick. Yes.
Bag of footballs.
Yeah, give us a bag of footballs and a used cheerleader, and here he is. So that's what happens when you have a long-term contract. Sometimes you get these guys. You're like, oh dear God, you know, year 3 in the contract, they're just garbage. So I'm with Greg in that. Yeah, that 4 years better than a long term. He'll only be 32. I know we're not all Tom Brady and can play till we're like 55 or whatever Tom's going to play to. But I'm cautiously optimistic because, as Eric can back me up, the NFC East is garbage, absolute trash right now.
Oh, hot garbage, yeah.
And the Giants football team, used to be known as the Redskins, and the Eagles have worse than the Cowboys' backup at quarterback right now. So I'm optimistic they can win their division.
That's not saying much.
No, it's not. It's not at all. No, it's definitely not.
One thing I do like is, so if you paid attention to the Zeke Elliott contract, the Amari Cooper contract, and then the Dak contract, they're all going to end at basically the same time. So I really like that. So we way overpaid Zeke Elliott, but by the time that 4-year contract of Dak's is done, Zeke and Dak will be free agents. So you definitely will not give Zeke another contract after that. You may or may not give Dak another contract after that, but now your cap is completely wide open. So I do like that part of the alignment.
And also, this may be the biggest contract football only for a year, because next year you have a Baker Mayfield. The guy for the Ravens. I swear I'm losing it tonight. Quarterback for the Ravens. Yeah, Jackson, who won the MVP a couple years ago. They're both coming up for a contract. And the Josh Allen for the Bills. I mean, Dak may be the only highest paid quarterback for a year. These guys have all got to get signed. They're on their rookie deal still. And so that, so it may not look like a terrible contract in 4 years. It may look like, wow, this wasn't too bad. But Jerry cost himself money by being Jerry and not signing Dak 2 years ago, which is just stupid. And
he was a hot mess in the press conference today. I mean,
oh my God!
Like the Jerry Jones School of Public Speaking.
He is 78 years old, and they need to put him in a back room and not bring him out for press conferences. That was word salad at its finest.
I thought you were going to say he should be president.
My God. It was awful.
Qualified by age.
It was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for him because he obviously is.
It's cringy.
I think that's the best proof I've ever seen that Stephen Jones is running the team right now, because there's no way Jerry's running anything at this point.
Oh, no.
I mean, he looked like. And by the way, Ben, if you're going to talk shit about the Detroit, you got to have me on. Look, everybody talks shit about Detroit. Detroit is the eternal train wreck. What would we be without Detroit being terrible every year? So I don't know that it would do any good to talk about Detroit, except to say that thank God we're not Detroit. So,
but having
I do like their new head coach, though.
Yeah, they have a quarterback that's not. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. This Goff says he's terrible. So I don't know. Sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you. I do like
Dan Campbell. He's a real take no nonsense. You're right in your face, dude. So I appreciate that. And the other thing about the Dak situation is people think that he's just going to come back and he's going to be the old Dak that runs really well. I just don't see it. I mean, he's going to have to adjust his game from that injury moving forward. So if you didn't like him as a passer before this, that's what you're going to get moving forward. And honestly, I mean, yeah, the Cowboys probably have the best quarterback in the division. It's not saying much, and they'll find a way to bugger it. They always do.
John Miller, I want to check that press conference out. I'm going to tell you what I sent my little brother 5 minutes. No, not even 5 minutes. 1 minute after the convention or the conference started. Wow, it took him exactly 1 minute to take a word salad left turn. And then my next was, I have no idea what he's saying. That's, if you get a chance, try to find it. It's pretty bad. It
really is.
It's the number one proof that he's not running the team anymore. He's just showing up to work and punching the card, and he's 78 years old, and he's seems like he's every year that 78 right now. So, which I don't know if that fills me with happiness knowing that Steven's running the team, because I was kind of hoping it would be better once Steven took over. But yowie, if this is Steven running the team, although I've heard the inside information, Steven's the one that got the contract done. So maybe he got tired of Jerry fiddle farting around for the last 2 years and said, "Look, we got to sign this guy because." We got a chance to actually win the division the next, and all he cares about. They could win the division the next 3 years, they'd be happy, because that's better than what they've done the last 3 years. So
if they don't do anything with their defense, they showed they had Dak and they would still lose games. So ultimately, I don't really buy that this is going to make them the front runners. We'll see.
Ben, come on, man, your jealousy showing. Oh, look at my 5 rings here. Why don't you show me those Lions rings? I don't see them. Mike McCarthy, give me a break. Come on, man. You got to slow your roll, buddy. Yeah. Sorry.
We're gonna have to have Ben on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I guess we got to have Ben on now so we can give him a hard time. Damn it.
He's below it from the abuse he's taking now.
Well, so we're this is why we call ourselves the Hex Crawl of podcasts, because we just roll everywhere from talking about Lamentations to Kickstarters to covering Dallas Cowboy football. So, show me another podcast that does that. And Star Wars. Yeah, nobody does that. Nobody does what we do.
No, they'd be afraid to.
We can do what they do. They cannot do what we do. That's the way you have to put it.
Right. Yeah. Zach and Skeeter can't hold a candle.
No, they can't do what we do. Sorry.
It's just simple facts, man. Simple facts. So we have surpassed the 2-hour mark.
Yes, and now you're at 25,193, sir. So we have put 25,000 American in the rearview mirror. Congratulations.
So those who backed Greg's latest, thank you for getting Mike off the hook. I would never have heard the end of it.
I don't know what I was going to do if I guaranteed that. Whew, that was a tough one.
You pulled through.
I called in some favors while you guys were talking. I was please buy.
Please now. Greg, thank you. As always, it was a fucking blast to have you on.
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always great to talk to both of you.
We love having it on. So what's the schedule for OSR Blether? You got a Blether coming up the next few weeks, or?
Well, I'm in the midst of midterm grading right now, so end of next week at the earliest. So I need to get through. I need to put my head down and plow through some grading, and then we'll see where I am next week.
That's a great show too. I watched last week, or the last time you had it on. That if you like, you can like Eric and I, but if you want a more intellectual conversation, you might want to tune into OSR Blether. Greg really classes that one up with his guests, Ian, his guests. So check that out.
You hit the random rumor table on that one.
Yeah, Mike and I make a point of not being classy. All right, we really try to keep that down south New Yorkies shit going, and we got somebody who was refined with us today, so don't get spoiled. We're not going to have refined with us. No,
we might have Ben Barsh on a few weeks. We're digging in the tunnels there.
Well, at which point we'll have the best hair, so I'll have to get another COVID haircut.
Boy, Ben cannot get his cowboy stuff up. Listen, look at this. He is. Oh man,
must have hit him pretty close to the mark.
I think it did. Wow.
Ben,
that empty display case of NFL championship trophies.
Oh, it's just almost too easy, isn't it, Greg? It's just I feel dirty about taking on a Detroit fan.
Being a New Yorker, I mean, all right, when the Jets won, I don't even know if I was fucking alive before I was. I don't remember it. But the Giants, I can recall the Giants winning.
They've won two. They've won two since the Cowboys won one. You got to give them that. Yep.
But I listen. You have my sympathies about Detroit, but at least they play on Thanksgiving, right? I mean, they got something out of the deal. They get to play in a holiday where everybody else is home with their family.
And by the time you get your second serving, they're already down by 25 points. So that's always a great game to watch the Lions play on Thanksgiving.
Bad Mike dropping facts.
Boom.
Oh,
down south feel as in South Bronx. Yes, John. And I did work in South Bronx.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
you so much, yes. Dr. Gillespie. And we'll try to have you on maybe before this is over in the next 3 weeks. I'll maybe not, but we will probably do a follow-up at some point this year talking about Dwarrowdeep and how that's going.
I appreciate it. Again, thanks very much. And thanks, everyone, for joining the chat.
Yes. Great turnout, great conversation, folks. None of us here are medical professionals. I'm just going to say what I've been always saying in the last couple of weeks. Use your common sense to keep yourself, your loved ones, your family, your friends, your community safe. All right? You wouldn't throw a fireball into a 10-by-10 room, or at least you claim you wouldn't have if you knew, because that's your character has common sense. Use your common sense. That's it. You know your risk levels. Be safe. Be well. God bless. Roll those dice. I'm going to knock on fake fucking wood. And God willing, I'm back with you all tomorrow. All right, folks. Later.